Welcome to Alexander's Studio. I'm your host, Alex Czisny, and today I want to talk to you about how to make picture frames. I'm going to show you 2 different techniques on how to cut them, and I'm going to show you 3 different ways on how to nail them together. Now, when you buy framing stock from a store or online, it's going to come in about 9-foot lengths, usually in pairs of 2s. Or if you wanted to, you could actually cut your own framing stock and have a piece of 1x3 maple that was cut with a lip on it. And this is pretty simple to make. All you do is make one cut on the table saw this direction, turn your stock, on the side and run it through this direction. And you can cut yourself a lip. And it's a very simple, very elegant frame that actually I frame most of my artwork with. What we'll be working with today is just this, some pretty simple, scrap stock that I have left over. I'm going to cut some 8x10s and 11x14 inch frames. So off to the frame cutter. If you're lucky and blessed, you may have a nice frame cutter to cut some frames with. And I fortunately do have one available to me. And you may be also wondering, what kind of framing stock do you want to use for your picture frame? And honestly, what it boils down to is, it depends. It depends on your personal preference. But one general rule I would say is the smaller the frame, you probably want a skinnier framing stock. And the larger the frame is, you probably want something a little bit thicker that stands out a little bit more. So I'm going to actually cut this into an 11x14 inch frame. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move these guards, these little lip holders for me, back on my framing cutter. Put my stock down and move the blade backwards. Now I'm going to take my stock and I'm going to put it on the table, and I'm going to cut the 14-inch length of my frame first. When lining up my framing stock, I'm going to make sure I line up my frame with the inside corner of the frame here. You want to make sure you're measuring your frame from this edge and not the outside edge, because this is the size of your artwork right here. And it's also important not to measure from this edge, because this is the interior edge of the lip. So you have to measure from right here. I'm going to line up this edge of my framing stock with 14 and 1/16. And then I'm going to bring in my stop to the edge of the frame and tighten it down. After I have my framing stock on the cutter and in place, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring these little tiny holders in and raise them up. What these holders do is they hold the lip of the picture frame up and keeps it from cracking or breaking off. Because this cutter works by just pushing down and chopping the frame or slicing it. So I'm going to lift these lip holders up until they just barely touch the edge of the picture frame molding. Right. Now with everything in place, I'm just going to cut off the edge of my frame. And I'm going to bring my blade in a little bit at a time. And this frame cutter is nice in the fact that the lip holders just move back as I push the blade forwards. And I'm going to simply cut a little bit at a time until I'm done. All right, that's one piece down, one more to go. With my stop in place, I don't have to do anything to my cutter. I can just insert my second piece of framing stock, make sure my guard's in place, move back the blade, and go ahead and cut my second piece. The nice thing about using the frame cutter with the stop is that no matter how many pieces I cut, whether I want to cut 2 or 14 pieces, I'm always going to get 2 pieces that are exactly the same length. So when you cut your pieces, make sure you do it at the same time. Now with my 14-inch sides cut, it's time for the 11-inch sides. It's the same process, moving the cutter head back, lining up my framing stock, and chopping a piece. Now I have 2 14 and 1/16 inch lengths cut, and I have 2 11 and 1/16 inch lengths cut. I'm going to go ahead and put them together, and I'm actually going to take a piece of tape and I'm going to wrap a piece of masking tape around the 4 pieces. And the only reason for this is that I don't mix them up with any other framing stock that I'm going to cut. So I'm going to cut about a dozen or so frames. So now I have my 4 pieces taped up. I'm ready to go to put them off to the side. I'm going to go ahead and show you how to cut these same pieces on a chop saw or a miter saw.